Good morning. It is Wednesday, and today's going to be a bit of an odd one, because I'm actually going to continue my recap from yesterday. That's because, as you probably noticed, I was still talking whenever I got to my office. There were still things that I wanted to mention that I had not had a chance to. And actually, one of my players mentioned one of the main ones after watching the video. And the more I thought about it, the more I think it kind of probably needs a video on its own anyway. So, the group ran into this other group of 4 mercenaries, adventurers, whatever you want to refer to them as. And we've talked about the fates of 3 of them. One of them was killed by the werewolf. One of them was killed by his friend. One of them escaped. That leaves the other one that was attacked by the werewolf, but which the group was able to rescue, or save, or heal, or prevent from dying, basically. And they brought her back to the campsite for questioning. She was not very receptive to their questioning. She basically told them that the orc were responsible for everything that was wrong with their lives, that years of starvation and lack of clothing, lack of supplies, lack of heating. Basically, she tells them that she grew up in an orphanage and that every problem they had was because of orc raids. Now, she genuinely seemed to believe that all of the problems the orphanage had were because of orc raids, and that she was doing a good thing by wiping out the orc, and that these people that were stopping her from doing that because they were orc lovers must be in the wrong. Now, many members of the group, having lived through this same time period, are very aware that the actual reason that the orphanage didn't have food or heat or anything else that it may have needed was because the greedy politicians at the top of the chain were milking the city for every copper and not caring if the weak or the poor suffered. In actual fact, that's what was going on. But obviously, this child in this orphanage, at least, and if they had questioned any further, they would have discovered that all 4 of the children, or the young people here, had known each other since they were children in that same orphanage. They had all grown up under those kind of starvation conditions. And this was their way out. But yeah, I mean, she basically gave it to them straight. They asked, how many orc had she killed? She told them, she'd killed 21. And she basically told them that if she survived, she was going to go right back to doing it. It was the right thing to do, and that was how it was. And so our friendly, grumpy, old druid killed her. Stabbed her through the heart. Yeah. So, I guess the question here really is, how do you define the line between right and wrong? She was doing what a independent third-party observer would probably refer to as an evil deed. She was exterminating a group based on their race. It was racist hate speech, basically. But from her perspective, she was trying to help people who were growing up in as desperate a situation as she grew up in. I mean, putting it on the line, none of the four characters that were involved in this other group were evil. 3 of them were good and 1 of them was neutral. He was chaotic neutral, and that's why he ended up stabbing his friend in the back, because he panicked. But still, none of them were evil. They were a group of children who had been indoctrinated from their earliest years to blame everything on the Orc. And the reason for this was that the orphanage was run by people that did not want to be killed by the Emperor. So they could not very well turn around and say, well, we don't have any food because the Emperor's representative took it. So they had to come up with some other excuse, some other tale to tell that would explain why the children were going hungry without slandering or besmirching the Emperor's name. So the Orc became an easy target. I mean, the Orc do, on occasion, raid outlying settlements or farms and take a little, a bit of crops here and there, but nothing on the scale that would affect a city like Zar. Nothing even close to the scale that would affect a city like Zar. But it made for an easy excuse. Orcs were outsiders. They were wanderers. They were these big, fierce, scary-looking monsters that it was easy to vilify. And so they did. And the people running this orphanage made Orc the villains of every story and the subject of every nightmare. They essentially brainwashed, they conditioned these children to believe that if anything went wrong, it was because of something the Orcs did. If the baker didn't give them any handout of bread, well, it was because the Orcs stole the crops that the baker needed, and so the baker didn't have enough to feed his own family, so he couldn't then afford to give them any bread. So it wasn't because the baker was being greedy or uncaring, or because he was selling it all to the politicians. It was the Orcs. They were the problem. And these people running the orphanage did that with every facet of life. Everything that went wrong was because of the Orc. And so when these children grew up, having never had anything but each other, they decided, we don't want another generation of kids to grow up like we did. We want them to have food, and we want them to have clothing. We're going to go out there and we're going to stop these Orc. And if that means killing all of them, then that means killing all of them. But we have to make this stop. Yeah. So with that, I send it out to you. I'm not going to give you a definitive answer because I don't think there is a definitive answer. The group basically chose to execute her for what she had done. If they had tried to talk her back down from it, it would have been a long and painful process. And she likely may have tried to either escape or betray them before they got through it. Because of the fact that she believed it for a decade. She was probably 19, 20 years old. Went into the orphanage at 3 or 4 and had been told that ever since. That's all she ever knew. And the same with the other 3. They were separated from their parents, or they lost their parents. Whatever happened. And they were all in that orphanage. So, yeah. Was killing her the right call? Was it justified? Should they have tried to show her the truth? I leave it out to you. Comment below with any thoughts you might have. Like, subscribe, helps me a lot. And it lets you know whenever I post more stuff, which is most days of the week. I take Sundays off. Sometimes I take Saturdays off as well. But aside from that, I'm driving to work and I'm talking. Have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow.